My name is Megan Anderson, and I am 34 years old. For 7 long years, I worked 70-hour weeks at my marketing job to save enough for my dream beach house. Every sacrifice felt worth it when I finally held the keys. Then, last spring, I opened my mailbox to find a wedding invitation listing my address as the venue. 200 guests were about to descend on my private property, and no one had even asked me. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from, and if your family has ever crossed your boundaries, hit that subscribe button and join me. Growing up in a large, close-knit family in Missouri taught me many things. Sharing was never optional, it was mandatory. With 3 siblings crammed into our modest 3-bedroom home, privacy was a luxury none of us could afford. My childhood bedroom doubled as a playroom for my younger sisters. My clothes routinely disappeared into my older brother Jason's closet whenever his friends were coming over and he needed to look presentable. Even my diary had communal readers, despite the tiny lock that came with it. "In this family, we share everything," my mother would say whenever I protested. "There are no secrets, no separate possessions. We are one unit." While I loved my family deeply, I always dreamed of having my own space, something that belonged solely to me. A sanctuary where I could breathe without someone asking what I was doing or borrowing something without returning it. This dream became more specific as I grew older. A house by the ocean where I could watch the waves from my window and fall asleep to the sound of water lapping against the shore. College was my first taste of independence, though even that came with compromises. I worked 3 jobs while maintaining a full scholarship. My roommates were considerate enough, but the cramped dorm and later a shared apartment with 4 other students only intensified my desire for a place of my own. After graduation, I landed an entry-level position at a marketing firm in Charlotte. The salary was modest, but I lived as frugally as possible. No vacations, no expensive clothes, no fancy restaurants. Every extra dollar went into my savings account labeled Beach House Fund. Years passed. I volunteered for every overtime opportunity, worked weekends when others wanted time off, and took on the clients no one else wanted. My dedication paid off with 6 promotions in 7 years. Each time my salary increased, my lifestyle remained the same. Friends teased me about my ancient car and my reluctance to join them for weekend getaways, but I stayed focused on my goal. House hunting was an exhausting process. I viewed 15 properties before finding the one, a modest but beautiful 2-bedroom cottage with a spacious deck overlooking the Atlantic Ocean in a quiet part of North Carolina. The price was at the very top of my budget, but the moment I stood on that deck and watched dolphins playing in the distance, I knew this was what I had worked so hard for. The day I signed the papers remains one of the proudest moments of my life. At 32, I had done what many said was impossible: purchased oceanfront property on a single income with no inheritance or windfall to help me. Just years of dedication and sacrifice. When I shared the news with my family, they seemed genuinely happy for me. My parents hugged me tightly, my siblings wanted to see photos. Everyone congratulated me on my achievement. "We always knew you could do it, honey. You were always the determined one." Yet, looking back, I should have noticed the red flags immediately. My mother asked for a key, just in case of emergencies. My brother Jason inquired which bedroom would be his when he visited. My father wanted to know if the garage could fit his boat during hurricane season. "It is your house," they assured me when I hesitated. "We just want to be prepared when we visit." In my naive happiness, I believed them. I thought they understood that this house represented not just a financial investment, but an emotional one. It was the manifestation of my independence, my adulthood, my right to create boundaries. I was wrong. The problems began almost immediately. For Thanksgiving that year, I invited my family to spend the holiday at my new home. They were scheduled to arrive on Wednesday afternoon. Instead, they showed up on Monday morning, catching me completely off guard when I was preparing to leave for an important client meeting. "We thought you'd come early and help you get ready," my mother explained, already rearranging my kitchen cabinets to make them more efficient. My father brought his fishing gear and invited his brother, my Uncle Dave, without consulting me. Uncle Dave arrived with his boat, which he promptly stored in my garage, displacing my car to the street where it was ticketed twice in 1 week. During that 5-day visit, my family members invited neighbors I had not yet met into my home for drinks. My cousin Sarah's 3 children used my white sofa as a canvas for their markers. When I mentioned the stains, Sarah shrugged and said, "That's why most people don't buy white furniture until their kids are grown." What bothered me most was how they referred to the house. It was never Megan's place or even Megan's beach house. In conversations, they called it our beach house or the family beach house on the coast. "When are we going back to our beach house?" my niece asked her mother within my hearing. "Maybe for spring break," my sister replied without hesitation. I tried to establish boundaries. I created a shared calendar where family members could request visits. I asked for at least 2 weeks' notice before anyone planned to come. I specified that the master bedroom was off limits to guests. These requests were met with eye rolls and complaints about me becoming uptight since buying the house. "You never used to be so selfish," my mother remarked when I declined her suggestion of hosting all 21 extended family members for the entire month of July. The worst incident came during 4th of July weekend. I had agreed to host my parents' siblings and their immediate families, a total of 12 people. When I arrived home from picking up groceries, I found my cousin Todd and his wife in my kitchen unloading their suitcases. "Hope you don't mind. They didn't have plans for the holiday," my sister said. But evening, 30 people were crammed into my house. Additional relatives had been invited without my knowledge. I ended up sleeping on my own couch while guests occupied all the bedrooms, including mine. When I found a stranger using my personal bathroom and rifling through my medicine cabinet, I nearly broke down in tears. "You have such a beautiful home," the woman said, who turned out to be my brother-in-law's cousin. "Your family is so lucky you share it." But I wasn't sharing it. It was being taken from me, piece by piece, memory by memory. The sanctuary I had worked so hard to create was becoming a source of anxiety rather than peace. The first major disappointment came after I had owned the house for about 9 months. My family had already established a pattern of showing up unannounced, staying longer than invited, and treating my personal space as communal property. But I still held out hope that with time and clear communication, they would start to respect my boundaries. That Thanksgiving was meant to be special, my first holiday hosting in my new home. I had planned a beautiful menu, decorated each guest room with fresh flowers and coastal-themed welcome baskets, and even scheduled a professional family photo session on the beach at sunset. I wanted to create new traditions in a place that meant so much to me. I invited my immediate family to arrive on Wednesday afternoon, giving me time to finish work projects before the holiday. Instead, my parents' car pulled into my driveway on Monday morning just as I was leaving for an important client meeting. "Surprise!" my mother called, already unloading multiple suitcases. My father was right behind her, followed by my brother Jason's entire family in a second vehicle. "But you weren't supposed to come until Wednesday," I said, checking my watch anxiously. "I have meetings all day today and tomorrow." "We thought you'd come early and help you get ready," my mother explained, already heading for my kitchen where she began rearranging my carefully organized cabinets to make them more efficient. By that evening, my house was overflowing. My father had called his brother, Uncle Dave, who lived about 3 hours away, and invited him to join us without asking me first. Uncle Dave arrived with his boat in tow, which he promptly stored in my garage. "Hope you don't mind," he said, tossing his duffel bag onto my living room floor. "The marina wanted to charge me winter storage fees. This saves me $600. With my car displaced to street parking, I received 2 parking tickets that week when I forgot to move it for street cleaning. When I mentioned this to Uncle Dave, he laughed and said, "Small price to pay for family, right?" The invasion of my space continued throughout the week. My sister Laura invited neighbors I had not yet met over for drinks one afternoon while I was on a work call. I emerged from my office to find strangers sitting on my deck using my good wine glasses. "These are the Johnsons from 3 doors down," Laura said casually. "I told them they should come see our amazing beach house."
our beach house, not my beach house. The phrase stung every time I heard it. The worst incident involved my cousin Sarah's 3 children, ages 4, 6, and 8. While I was preparing Thanksgiving dinner, the kids were supposedly watching a movie in the living room. When I went to call everyone for the meal, I discovered all 3 children using my expensive white linen sofa as an art table, complete with uncapped markers and spilled juice. "Kids!" I gasped, rushing over to assess the damage. "Those markers are permanent!" Sarah wandered in, phone in hand, barely glancing at the disaster scene. "Oh, they were just getting creative," she said with a shrug.
That's why most people don't buy white furniture until their kids are grown. You should have known better with family visiting. No apology, no offer to clean up or help with reupholstery costs, just the implication that it was somehow my fault for having nice things in my own home. Throughout that week, I noticed how my family members referred to the house in conversation. It was never Megan's place or even Megan's beach house. It was always our beach house or the family beach house. "When are we coming back to our beach house for Christmas?" my niece asked her mother within my hearing. "Maybe we'll do spring break here instead," my sister replied without hesitation, not even glancing my way for confirmation. After that disastrous visit, I tried to establish clearer boundaries. I created a shared online calendar where family members could request visits with at least 2 weeks of notice. I specified that certain areas were off limits, including my home office and master bedroom. I even wrote up a brief house rules document, trying to frame it positively as a way to preserve the house we all enjoyed. These requests were met with eye rolls and complaints. My brother called me uptight. My mother said I was becoming too concerned with material things. "You used to be so selfish," she remarked when I declined her suggestion of hosting all 21 extended family members for the entire month of July. "That house has plenty of room if people sleep on air mattresses." But it wasn't about physical space. It was about my mental space, my right to decide when and how to share something I had worked so hard to obtain. The 4th of July weekend became the breaking point of my first year of home ownership. I had agreed to host my parents' siblings and their immediate families, a total of 12 people. I spent hundreds of dollars on groceries, prepared welcome baskets, and even hired a cleaning service beforehand to make sure everything was perfect. When I arrived home from my final grocery run, I found my cousin Todd and his wife in my kitchen unloading their suitcases. "Hope you don't mind," my sister said when she noticed my confused expression. They didn't have plans for the holiday, and I knew we had floor space. By evening, more uninvited guests had arrived. My brother's college roommates and his family, my sister's neighbor and their teenage children, my father's golf buddy and his wife. In total, 30 people were crammed into my 2-bedroom house with tents set up in the backyard and sleeping bags covering every inch of floor space. I ended up sleeping on my own couch because all the beds, including my own, were occupied by guests. The next morning, I found a woman I didn't recognize using my personal bathroom, going through my medication cabinet. "Oh, hi," she said cheerfully, holding my prescription migraine medication. "What's this for?" "Who are you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. "I'm Denise, Carl's cousin. Carl was my brother-in-law, whom I had only met 3 times. You have such a beautiful home," she continued, returning my medication to the cabinet. "Your family is so lucky you share it so generously." But I wasn't sharing it, not willingly. My home was being treated like a public beach resort, with people I barely knew making themselves comfortable in my most private spaces. That weekend, someone broke my grandmother's vase. 3 wine glasses disappeared, and my refrigerator was completely emptied without anyone offering to replace the food or contribute to expenses. By Sunday evening, when I finally reclaimed my bedroom and found sand between my sheets and a strange stain on my comforter, I sat on the floor of my closet and cried. The sanctuary I had worked 70-hour weeks for 7 years to create had become a source of dread and anxiety. Yet even then, I blamed myself for not being clear enough, for not being firm enough.
I told myself that with better communication and firmer boundaries, my family would eventually understand and respect that this was my home, not a communal family property. I was about to learn how wrong I was. The situation escalated dramatically in early spring, about 15 months after I purchased my beach house. By then, I had become accustomed to constant boundary violations, though I was still trying different strategies to reclaim my space without causing a family rift. It began at a family dinner at my parents' home in Missouri. I had flown in for the weekend to celebrate my father's birthday. The usual crowd was there, my siblings, their spouses and children, plus various aunts, uncles, and cousins who lived nearby. During dessert, Island thought about staying on this family-built structure. Nope. I never get in trouble for getting on a family-built structure. Good. Weren't you thinking of a September wedding? Alice said, blushing as she showed off her engagement ring. Nothing too fancy, but special. My Aunt Karen, Alice's mother, immediately chimed in. You know what would be perfect? Megan's beach house. Right on the water, gorgeous views, plenty of space for a medium-sized wedding. I nearly choked on my cake. I don't think that would work, I said quickly. It's really not set up for events. The property isn't that large. Nonsense, Aunt Karen waved away my concern. That deck could easily fit 50 people, and we could set up tents on the beach portion. There are actually some beautiful wedding venues nearby, I suggested, trying to sound helpful rather than defensive. The Sandpiper Hotel has an amazing oceanfront ballroom, and there's a historic lighthouse that hosts events. I could send you links. Instead of taking the hint, my family members began talking over each other with ideas for transforming my home into a wedding venue. My mother suggested moving my furniture into storage to create more space. My brother talked about building a temporary dance floor in my carefully landscaped backyard. My sister wondered out loud if her children could be flower girls and stay in their usual room. It would save so much money, Uncle Bob pointed out. Wedding venues charge thousands nowadays. When I tried again to express my concerns, Aunt Karen fixed me with a cold stare. I always thought you were more generous than this, Megan. This is Alice's special day we're talking about. I know, and I want it to be perfect for her. That's why I think a real venue would be better. My house only has 2 bathrooms, limited parking, and neighbors who wouldn't appreciate hundreds of guests. By the end of the evening, I was being called ungenerous, selfish, and not a team player. Even Alice, who had initially seemed open to looking at proper venues, joined in by saying, I always dreamed of a beach wedding, and your house is already in the family. I returned to North Carolina the next day, unsettled, but hoping the wedding venue discussion had just been talk. I sent Alice links to 3 beautiful nearby venues as promised, along with my offer to contribute $500 toward whichever one she chose as my wedding gift. 3 weeks later, I came home early from a business trip from a migraine to find a strange woman walking through my living room making notes on a tablet. Excuse me, I said, startled and confused. Who are you? The woman extended her hand with a bright smile. Bethany Williams, wedding planner extraordinaire. You must be Cousin Megan. Alice said you might be home, but not until later. I was just getting a feel for the space. How did you get in? I demanded. She looked surprised at my tone. Alice sent me the garage door code. She said it would be fine. I had given Alice that code during her previous visit for convenience, never imagining she would share it with strangers or use it without my permission. After showing the wedding planner out, I found a draft seating chart left on my kitchen counter. It detailed table arrangements for 200 guests, with my master bedroom labeled as the bridal dressing room and my office designated as the groom's suite. I immediately called Alice, my hands shaking with anger and disbelief. Alice, did you meet Bethany? She asked cheerfully. Isn't she great? She did my friend Stephanie's wedding last year. Alice, we never agreed that you could have your wedding at my house, I said firmly. In fact, I specifically suggested other venues. But everyone loved the idea of the beach house. It's family property anyway. It's not family property, I corrected her. It's my house. I paid for it. My name is on the deed and the mortgage. Well, it's a family asset, she insisted. That's how we all see it. You're just being technical about the ownership part. The conversation deteriorated from there, with Alice eventually hanging up after telling me I was ruining her dream wedding out of selfishness. That night, I had my first panic attack in years. The room spun, my chest tightened, and I couldn't catch my breath as I realized how completely my boundaries were being ignored. My safe haven, the place I had sacrificed so much to create, had become a source of dread and anxiety. That day, I called my therapist for an emergency session. Dr. Anderson had been helping me work through family issues for years, and she immediately recognized the severity of the situation. This goes beyond normal family overstepping. She told me, they're not just ignoring your boundaries. They're acting as if you don't have the right to set any at all. With her encouragement, I requested a family Zoom meeting to discuss the wedding situation directly. I prepared notes, practiced my points, and tried to approach it as reasonably as possible. The call was a disaster. When I explained that I was not comfortable hosting a 200-person wedding at my private residence, my family reacted as if I had suggested canceling Christmas. But we already told everyone, Alice whined. It's just one day, my mother argued. Actually, with setup and cleanup, it would be closer to a week. So what? It's not like you don't have the space, Uncle Bob interjected. It's not about the space. I tried to explain. It's about consent.
We would need 3 days for setup and at least 1 for cleanup, so 5 days total, Bethany said matter-of-factly. Excuse me? I exclaimed. And where exactly am I supposed to be during this time? You could stay with Susan next door, my father suggested casually, or just go to a hotel for the weekend. It would be easier for everyone if you weren't underfoot during preparations anyway. The casual way he suggested I vacate my own home for nearly a week left me speechless. We've already paid deposits to the caterer, the florist, and the DJ, Aunt Karen added. Non-refundable deposits, Megan. Thousands of dollars, Alice said, her eyes welling with tears. It would be so embarrassing to change it now. You're being dramatic, Uncle Bob declared. This is what family does. As the conversation continued, more shocking details emerged. Not only had they planned to use my house for the main event, but they also expected to house the entire bridal party and immediate family, 15 people, in my 2-bedroom home for up to a week surrounding the wedding. We'll be respectful of your things, my mother promised, as if that addressed the fundamental violation at hand. Then came the final blow. When I pointed out once more that this was my house that I had saved for years to afford, my father cleared his throat. Well, technically, we helped you with the down payment, so it's partly ours anyway. My heart stopped. What are you talking about? I saved every penny for that down payment myself. My father looked uncomfortable. Remember that $20,000 gift we gave you when you graduated college? We always considered that an investment in the beach house. That was 10 years before I bought this house, I exclaimed. You told me it was to help with student loans. Well, yes, my mother interjected, but money is fungible, dear. If we helped with loans, that freed up your other money for the house eventually. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My family was not only commandeering my home, but retroactively claiming partial ownership based on a gift given a decade earlier with entirely different stated intentions. After the call ended, I sat in stunned silence for nearly an hour. Then I broke down completely, sobbing until my throat was raw and my eyes were swollen. This was beyond boundary violations. It was a complete disregard for my personhood, my rights, and my achievements. The house that had represented freedom and independence now felt like a trap. The family that I had loved and trusted had revealed that they never truly respected me or what I had accomplished. They saw my most significant achievement as a communal asset to which they were entitled access regardless of my feelings or consent. That night, as I stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep, I realized something had fundamentally changed. I was done trying to reason with people who had no intention of respecting my boundaries. If my family wanted to treat this like a business transaction, claiming investment in my property, then perhaps it was time I approached it the same way. For 3 days following that devastating Zoom call, I cycled through grief, rage, and disbelief.
I called in sick to work, something I rarely did, and alternated between crying jags and periods of numbed shock. How could the people who were supposed to love me treat my feelings with such casual dismissal? On the fourth day, I woke up with a startling clarity. If my family refused to respect my personal boundaries, perhaps they would respect legal and financial ones. I began researching family psychology, particularly patterns of entitlement and boundary violations. And what I found validated my feelings. My family's behavior was not normal sharing, it was inappropriate overreach. Articles about family enmeshment and emotional incest described exactly what I had experienced growing up. The expectation that individual needs and boundaries must always be sacrificed for the family unit. One therapist wrote, "In healthy families, personal property and personal space are respected. In enmeshed families, the concept of mine is treated as selfish and threatening to family cohesion." Armed with this validation, I contacted Patricia Reynolds, the property lawyer who had helped with my home purchase. When I explained the situation, she was appropriately outraged. "They can't legally use your property without permission. You have every right to deny access, change locks, or even seek a restraining order if necessary." "I don't want to involve the police," I told her. "These are still my family members, even if they are behaving terribly." "Then let's consider alternatives," Patricia suggested. "Have you thought about what you want the outcome to be?" That question lingered with me. What did I want? I wanted my family to respect my boundaries, but years of evidence suggested that was unlikely to happen through discussion alone. I wanted to reclaim my home as my sanctuary. And if I was being completely honest, I wanted my family to face consequences for their presumptuous behavior. An idea began to form. If they were treating my home like a rental venue, perhaps I should do the same. I researched luxury vacation rental companies in my area and discovered Coastal Elite Properties, a high-end agency specializing in last-minute bookings for celebrities and executives. Their properties rented for premium rates, especially during the wedding season. The following day, I met with Olivia Torres, the director of property acquisition for Coastal Elite. "Your timing is impeccable," Olivia told me after touring my home. "We just had a cancellation for a property we had booked for a film director and his family. They were scheduled for the second week of September, and we're desperate to find a replacement." The second week of September, exactly when Alice's wedding was scheduled to start. "How long would you need the property?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "7 days minimum," Olivia replied. "Our clients prefer extended stays." The more we talked, the more perfect the opportunity seemed. Coastal Elite would pay me triple the normal market rate due to the last-minute nature of their need. They would handle all aspects of the rental, including security and property management during the stay. Most importantly, they required exclusive use of the property, no exceptions. Once we book clients, the house becomes completely unavailable to anyone else, including the owner. Our clients value their privacy above all else. By the end of our meeting, I had a contract in hand that would begin on September 13th, exactly one day before Alice and her wedding planner were scheduled to begin setup and continue for 10 days. The rental agreement specifically prohibited cancellations without significant financial penalties and explicitly stated that no unauthorized guests would be permitted on the property during the rental period. That evening, I sat on my deck with a glass of wine, turning the contract over in my hands. Was I really going to do this? Part of me felt guilty about the potential fallout. Another part, the part that had been disrespected and bulldozed for months, felt a surge of vindication. I decided to make one final attempt at reason. I called Alice directly, without the rest of the family present. "I want to talk about the wedding," I began. "I understand this is important to you, but we need to find a compromise that respects my boundaries too." "There's nothing to compromise about," Alice replied, her voice tight. "The invitations are sent. People have made travel plans. It has to be at the beach house." "But it's my house, Alice. It's not a public venue. It's the family beach house. Why can't you just be happy to share your good fortune?" "Because no one asked. I simply said, no one considered my feelings or my rights as the homeowner." "You're being selfish. This is my special day and you're trying to ruin it because you want to be difficult." After 15 minutes of circular conversation, I realized nothing had changed. In Alice's mind, and presumably the rest of my family's, my feelings were irrelevant compared to their desires. The next day, I signed the rental contract with Coastal Elite Properties. I also added specific clauses to protect my most personal possessions, ensuring that certain rooms would be locked and secured during the rental period. I arranged for my valuable or sentimental items to be stored safely away. To ease my conscience, I decided that half of the substantial rental income would be donated to First Time Home Foundation, a nonprofit that helped young professionals with down payments on their first homes. With the contract signed, I booked myself a weekend at an exclusive spa resort 3 hours away for the dates surrounding the wedding. I would be unreachable during the critical period, giving myself space to process whatever fallout occurred. As the weeks passed, wedding preparations continued without my input. Occasionally, family members would message about specific details, where to set up the bar, whether they could remove certain furniture pieces, if the neighbor would mind extra cars parked on the street. I responded vaguely, neither confirming nor denying any plans. My anxiety grew as September approached. I second-guessed my decision daily, wondering if I was overreacting or being needlessly vindicative. But then I would receive another presumptuous message, Aunt Karen asking which bathroom the bride should use for preparation, my mother informing me they would move my bedroom furniture to accommodate the bridal party, and my resolution strengthened. 1 week before the scheduled rental, I received a call from Olivia at Coastal Elite. "Just confirming our schedule," she said briskly. "Our team will arrive at 9 a.m. on the 13th to prepare the property. The clients will arrive at noon on the 14th. Is that still acceptable?" The 14th? Exactly the day Alice and her wedding planner were scheduled to begin setup. "Yes," I replied, my heart pounding.
Part of me wanted to warn my family, to give them time to make alternative arrangements, but I remembered how they had ignored my objections for months, how they had sent out invitations without my consent, how they had dismissed my feelings as irrelevant. No, I decided. They would discover the consequences of their actions the same way I had discovered their plans, without warning and without consideration for my feelings. The die was cast. In 1 week, my family would learn that boundaries were not suggestions, and my home was not communal property. Whatever happened next, I would face it knowing I had finally stood up for myself after years of acquiescence. September 13th dawned bright and clear, a perfect North Carolina late summer day, the kind of day that, under different circumstances, would have made a beautiful wedding backdrop. I woke early, my stomach in knots, knowing that by afternoon, everything would change. At 8:30 a.m., the Coastal Elite Properties management team arrived to begin preparing the house for their clients. A team of 6 professional cleaners, a property manager named Marcus, and a security specialist named Diana quickly and efficiently began their work. "We'll need you to verify the locked rooms before we finish," Marcus informed me, reviewing his checklist and confirming that all personal items had been secured. I had spent the previous evening storing anything of sentimental or significant value in my office, which would remain locked during the rental period. Family photos had been carefully packed away and replaced with generic coastal artwork. It felt strange to depersonalize my home this way, but also oddly freeing. At 10:30, while the team was still working, a familiar SUV pulled into my driveway. Alice, Ryan, and Bethany, the wedding planner, had arrived a date early, their vehicle packed with decorations and supplies. I watched from the kitchen window as they approached my front door, laughing and chatting excitedly. When Alice rang the doorbell, I took a deep breath before answering. This was the moment I had been dreading and anticipating for weeks. "Hey, Alice," I greeted her calmly. "We thought we'd get a head start on setup," she said cheerfully. "The florist is coming tomorrow morning, and we need to get the arch in place today." Behind her, Ryan was already unloading boxes from their car. Bethany stood nearby, tapping on her tablet. "Actually," I said evenly, "there's been a change of plans." Alice's smile faltered slightly. "What do you mean? We agreed on the timeline last month." "No," I corrected. "You decided on the timeline last month. I never agreed to any of this." Before she could respond, Marcus appeared beside me.
Excuse me, Miss Anderson, but are these people on the approved visitor list? Alice's eyes widened as she noticed the Coastal Elite Properties logo on Marcus's polo shirt. What is going on? Who is this? She demanded. This is Marcus, the property manager for Coastal Elite Properties. I have rented out my house for the next 10 days. The color drained from Ellis's face. What? You can't be serious. I'm completely serious, I replied. The house is not available from today through the 23rd. Ryan stopped unloading from his car and approached the door, concern etched on his face. There must be some mistake. We have the wedding here in 2 days. 200 people are coming. That was scheduled without my consent, I reminded him. I never agreed to host your wedding. Bethany pushed forward, her professional demeanor cracking slightly. This is completely unprofessional. We have vendors arriving tomorrow, guests flying in from across the country. I understand that puts you in a difficult position, I acknowledged, but so did sending out invitations listing my private residence without my permission. Just then, another car pulled into the driveway. Aunt Karen emerged, her arms full of garment bags, including what was clearly Alice's wedding dress in a transparent protective cover. I brought the dress and the bridesmaids' outfits, she called out cheerfully, before noticing the tense scene at the front door. What's happening? Alice turned to her mother, now tears streaming down her face. Megan has rented out the house. She says we can't have the wedding here. Aunt Karen froze for a moment before marching up to the door, her face contorted with rage. What is the meaning of this? You can't do this to your own cousin. Actually, I can, I replied, maintaining my composure. This is my property, and I have entered into a legal contract with Coastal Elite. The house is unavailable for the dates you plan to use it, without my permission, I might add. Cancel the contract, Aunt Karen demanded. This is family, Megan. Blood. Does that mean nothing to you? Respect means something to me. Consent means something to me, neither of which were considered when you planned an entire wedding at my home without asking me. The confrontation escalated as more family members began to arrive. My parents pulled up 30 minutes later, followed closely by Uncle Bob and several cousins who had come early to help with preparations. Each new arrival brought fresh waves of shock, anger, and accusations. You selfish, heartless girl, my mother gasped when she understood what was happening. How could you do this to Alice, to all of us? The same way you all did this to me, I replied steadily. By making decisions without considering my feelings or seeking my consent. Uncle Bob threatened legal action, puffing up his chest and throwing around legal terms he clearly didn't understand. This is breach of contract, tortious interference. I'll sue you for damages. In response, I simply handed him a copy of my property deed. There is no contract. I never agreed to host this wedding, and as the sole legal owner of this property, I have the right to determine how it is used. As the chaos unfolded in my front lawn, Bethany, the wedding planner, retreated to her car and was frantically calling venues to check last-minute availability. Alice collapsed into tears in Ryan's arms, while Aunt Karen continued to alternate between begging and threatening me. We can work something out, my father attempted to negotiate, pulling me aside. Just tell this rental company there was a mistake. We'll pay whatever penalty. The contract has a no cancellation clause, and the clients are arriving tomorrow, high-profile clients who value their privacy and exclusivity. More than your own family? He demanded, his voice rising. This isn't about choosing strangers over family. This is about establishing that my home is not communal property, that my consent matters. By mid-afternoon, and reality of the situation had finally begun to sink in. The wedding would not be happening at my beach house. 200 guests would need to be notified. Alternative arrangements would have to be made with less than 48 hours' notice. What are we supposed to do now? Alice wailed. Everything is ruined. I understand this is upsetting, I acknowledged. But there are beautiful venues nearby that might be able to accommodate you on short notice. The Sandpiper Hotel has an emergency wedding package specifically for situations like this. You expect us to pay for a venue when we could have used the beach house for free? Aunt Karen snapped. Nothing is free, I replied. You were planning to use my property without permission. That comes with its own costs to our relationship, to my peace of mind, to my sense of security in my own home. As the afternoon wore on, my mother made one last emotional appeal. Please, Megan, if you ever loved this family, reconsider. Cancel the rental. We can still salvage the wedding. I do love this family, I told her honestly. That's why this hurts so much. But love should not require me to give up my autonomy or my right to be treated with respect. By 6, Marcus informed me that they needed everyone to leave so they could complete their preparations. Diana, the security specialist, stepped forward to politely but firmly escort my family members off the property. We have instructions that only approved individuals are permitted on site during the rental period. I must ask you all to vacate the premises immediately. As my family reluctantly gathered their belongings and prepared to leave, the accusations and guilt trips continued. I will never forgive you for this, Alice declared, her mascara streaked down her face. Never. You are no longer welcome in this family, Aunt Karen added. Consider yourself cut off. My father, who had been relatively quiet for the past hour, fixed me with a disappointed stare. I didn't raise you to be this selfish. My mother and I always taught you to share. You taught me that my boundaries don't matter, I corrected him. That my feelings are less important than everyone else's convenience. That is a lesson I am now unlearning. As they drove away, my phone began lighting up with messages and calls from various extended family members who had heard about the situation. I silenced it and handed my keys to Marcus, who would oversee the property during my absence. The security team will be in place around the clock, he assured me. No unauthorized persons will gain access. I nodded, suddenly exhausted by the day's events. Thank you. I'll be leaving shortly, for my own accommodations. As I packed my bag for my spa weekend, I felt a complex mixture of emotions: vindication, guilt,